Hi everyone, it's Kino here. Welcome to this Ashtanga tune-up series. This class is all about Navasana. I know it's your favorite pose, boat pose. So I want to break this down because I feel like there are so many ways that we can avoid doing the work and work really, really hard at the same time. And I know there's nothing more frustrating than feeling like you try with all your heart and all your soul and nothing happens. I couldn't do the lift up. I couldn't do Navasana properly when I first started practicing. But more than 20 years later, I can tell you that you can find the way to make your boat finally float. So the first thing to think about in Navasana is to really understand where the structural integrity of the asana comes from, and then where the ease of the asana is. There's always going to be in your asana practice a kind of balance between effort and ease. It's never all squeeze and it's never all relaxation. There's always some balance that comes in, and this is really one of the core teachings of the philosophy of yoga. So in Navasana itself, let's try this together. We can come to a seated position with the knees forward. The biggest mistake that people make is they think they have to balance on their sitting bones. So if you roll forward to the front of your sitting bones, you can feel that the knees separate and the back muscles activate. And the sitting bones are very pointy and specific. And when people try to balance on their sitting bones, they end up using their back muscles and pushing the belly out and end up with a lot of pain in the front of the hip flexor region. So we want to think about actually the complete opposite of that in Navasana. So let's put your feet on the ground, and I want you to rock back and forward so you can find your sitting bones. Then, let's draw the navel in and give a little pelvic floor activation. I'd like you to rotate the tailbone just a little bit under, so there's almost like a sinking feeling. Your sitting bones are still in contact with the ground, but you move to the back of the sitting bones. And this gives a little bit of weight to the space between your sitting bones and your tailbone. And this is actually our kind of most efficient place to balance in Navasana. We'll keep the feet on the ground, and then I'd like you to lean just a little bit back, and we can even go, again, we're feeling the back of the sitting bones, the space between the sitting bones and the tailbone. The knees are coming lightly in, and then extend the arms. So this is kind of our anchored boat, where the strength of the hull of the boat is really being built and fortified. So we're drawing the navel in. Your abs, the lower abdominal region, is firm and rooting down, right? So you're thinking pull in and root down. Nice. So let's hold it there. Stay for another few breaths. Nice. What's going on with your torso? From the navel and up, the torso is kind of free. It's not extended and it's not squeezed under, but we kind of have this neutral position from the navel and up. So Navasana is complex. From the navel and down, we're tucking under and firming. From the navel and up, we're sort of floating and finding center line orientation. Good. Let's separate the knees. Push the knees away from each other and come just a little bit forward. Let's explore deepening that just a little bit. Now I'd like you to put your feet on the ground, and this time point the toes, and let's separate the knees. Separating the knees just a little bit can give a lot of relief to the front of the hip flexor. The hip flexor can overactivate if the muscles of your lower abdomen and your pelvic floor are not like really, really activated. So let's see if we can find tips of the sitting bones where we don't want to be. Roll a little bit back so that we can feel that sinking round sensation in the whole of the pelvis, and then draw everything in. Keep a firm center. Then place your hands underneath the knees, right? And we'll hold it there for a few breaths. Good. Get that feeling where we have two different opposing forces. We're thinking about from the navel down to the pubic bone, firm, rooted down. From the navel and up, there's this feeling of length. And then we're going to add in the legs. The femurs or the thigh bones are going to roll back into their sockets. So we're moving from the hip being open to the hip being a little more closed. And let's see if we can balance here with the shoulder blades moving down the back. We'll switch the hands to underneath the knees. Good. Hold it there for a moment. The navel draws in. Nice. And then see if you can draw the knees towards each other. If you draw the knees towards each other and there's a big pain in the front of the pelvis, right now let's just keep the knees separated. Then switch to one finger, and the muscles of the lower abdomen have to be really, really activated. So the more we release with the hands, the more we activate with the strength of the pelvis. Then extend the arms. When you extend the arms, you don't need to reach forward. Just allow your shoulders to be placed in a neutral position, palms facing each other, hands same height as the shoulders. Good. Let's give it a break. Cross your feet. We'll reach a little bit forward. And then next, we're going to see about straightening the legs. So when we think about straightening the legs in our Navasana position, we're also going to be battling hamstring flexibility and forward bend flexibility. So if your forward bend flexibility is not established yet, you could be bumping up against that here. We can take a look at forward bends, and we will take a look at forward bends separately. But for right now, just know that flexibility in the midst of a strength-based asana will probably not improve, and we'll need to go back to work on flexibility separately. So just be aware of that. Okay. Now, point your feet. Separate the knees lightly, find that whole shape, that round sort of, open position at the base of the pelvis so that we can feel weight being able to descend. Hold on underneath the knees, then gently close the hip a little bit. This time we're going to change our grip to hold on to the ankles, and then inhale, let's straighten the arms. Good. When you straighten the arms here, the shoulders will draw down the back and we'll balance here. Gaze up at the toes and notice how the arms are doing quite a lot of the work. So we're going to have to transfer whatever work your arms are doing down into the pelvis. So slowly as you exhale, draw the muscles of the lower abdomen in and then root them down. Remember, from the navel down to the pubic bone, we draw in and we keep it firm. Then from the navel and up, it's free, the neck is free, the face is free. Change to one fingertip. Good. Activate the thighs, but don't overactivate the thighs. Think about drawing the thigh bones in to the pelvis and then extend the arms. We balance. Good. Little shaking sensations, no problem. I have them here as well. Don't close the hip too much. Don't open too much, or we could get into that back muscle feeling. Let's rescue the feet for a moment. Hold on to the ankles. Give it a small break. We activate the core, the very root at the bottom of the pelvis. The lower abdominals, the thighs move deeper down into their pelvic activation, one fingertip, and then balance. Nice. Hold it there, keep it steady. Good. And then exhale, let's set it down. All right, so we're feeling that the front of the pelvis, what we call the hip flexors, those get worked powerfully. That's fine. We don't want there to be no work in the front of the pelvis, but what we don't want is work that won't lead us to the goal. So again, when we're thinking about Navasana, if we're too collapsed in the upper body, then we'll be compressing and not finding that balance of rooting down and extending. If we're too extended in the front body and we're too extended in the chest, the back muscles do the work of what that lower abdominal region should be doing in the asana. If we're kicking or pushing out with the legs, this almost assures that we'll feel that pain in the front of the hip joint, but we won't be feeling really the results that we're expecting from it. So work on your Navasana, find your connection, and figure out which variation of boat is better for you. Is it with the feet on the ground and the knees together or a little apart, pointing the toes? Are we balancing, holding underneath? Are we balancing with the arms extended? Are we extending the legs? With or without the arms. We have many different variations of Navasana. Just like there are many different versions of boat, I encourage you to explore which boat is best to support your practice, and then keep practicing.